In this video demo, we'll be looking at how Comnoco can extend your no-code app, whether you're building with Bubble or a different no-code platform, to enable you to generate really rich and really clean email templates in HTML that you can then feed into an email API of your choice. So I'm going to hand over to Stuart. And Stuart, could you start by explaining a quick demo, introduction of what Comnoco can do, and then we'll launch into email templates as a demo.
Awesome. Cool. Yes. So Comnoco. So Comnoco is a visual programming language that you can use to build your own backends, your own APIs, process webhooks that come in from other systems, or run tasks on a schedule. So let's dive in and go and have a look at it. So you can sign up and log in with social service or email and password. I'm going to use Google here. And once you log in, you will get taken to probably what looks a lot neater than mine area. So I've got a number of teams. You'll just have by default one. And then in the teams, you'll be able to create a new workspace. So I've got this one I prepared earlier for this, which is what we're working with today. So we're going to focus very much on how to create a transactional email in a sort of visual editor that you can sort of hyper personalize today. So we'll fly through some of the concepts that you can learn about in other videos and just focus on that today. But basically, when you build in Comnoco, you build functions which are reusable components that you can create once and reuse in many places. And when you build them, you can organize them into collections. Just means you can literally be organized. So all my things for connecting to Stripe are here, and everything else that's got my tax calculations is here. That's all you're doing with these collections. So we are going to look at generating a nice transactional email. So to do that, we want to create a transactional email template. So if we do this, we'll give it a name and we'll call it order. And this will give us a skeleton template, email template. So basically, this is where you build up the template. So the first thing we can do perhaps is show you what that looks like very simply. So if I click add here, it shows you the things you can add. So let's add, for example, a hero section on, and that's now given us that section there with the hero, and it's got some text, hero title. So if I refresh that, you'll see there's our hero section. It's got a background image. If we click there, you'll see there's the background image, which is a placeholder, and it's got the text, which we could go in here and change. So do that, etc., and you'll see the text changes. So that's how you build. You basically build up these components. Now, emails and email HTML is frankly a bit of a nightmare. So there's the problem with email HTML is it doesn't support JavaScript, so you can't do fancy clever things, and it doesn't support much advanced HTML either, because you've got Apple devices, Windows devices, Samsung devices, mobile devices, desktop devices, tablets, you name it. And with email, you've got to hit kind of the lowest common denominator to match all of those. And that's why you'll find quite a few email builders are limited for good reason. And that's why you'll find that just taking HTML that looks great on a website just won't work with email. So what we've done is we've built this on top of an open source library called MJML, which solves all those problems for you. It makes sure it works on everything from archaic Microsoft Outlook through to Gmail, etc. Works on mobile, works on desktop. So basically what you're creating here is, or what Comnoco creates from these blocks, is HTML. So we can add more blocks, and we can even see the HTML it creates. So the resulting HTML looks like this. And the MJML, which is the open source library we build on top of, looks like this. So we're building it through that system to make sure we take advantage of that stuff. And one benefit of that is that actually if you've got an MJML template elsewhere that someone else has built or that you've downloaded, you can actually import it and it will turn it into a Comnoco email template. But we're starting from scratch on this one today. So there we go. So I've added like a hero section. Let's just show you a couple more things that you can build. So if I click here and I'm going to add a section, and in that section I'm going to put 2 columns maybe. And in one of those columns, we're just trying to add something. Let me add a button maybe. And in that button, the content, I just put hi. And in the other column, maybe I'll just add some text. And we'll put content of, hi again. What you'll see is that this should now have created 2 columns with our content. And the beauty of that is now
hours of
it's
frustration
automatically responsive
by
when
just
you go to
having it
mobile.
work like that.
So you can explore these blocks yourself. I'm not going to I'd go further. I think hours to days of frustration when it comes to building email templates. Absolutely. And then, of course, what I haven't said is that, you can style everything. So you've got, everything from the size to the padding to the borders, whatever it might be, you can style when you're on each of these. So a container for the column. So we could give that background color, make it look awful. You can tell at this point I'm not a designer, but there you go. You can see that column now has a background color and that becomes clearer there. So you can style all this stuff. But then, of course, Comnoco allows you to completely bring it alive. So this template, we can define things that come in. So I can go up here and I can say, let's take in some text. And that text might be, I don't know, the name in. So the name that comes in, and let's just set a value to my name. So we're taking that name in. Now we can use it. So we can go down to this text item that's here, and we can click this button here, and that exposes it to what we call the Comnoco tree. And then what we can do is replace it with the content that comes in. So now, if I refresh that, you'll see that's now got my name in it. Simple things. Now what we could also do is maybe we have an order comes in that has multiple items. So maybe let's do that. I'm going to click here on my input and I'm going to give it a data structure, which is essentially JSON that comes in. So maybe I'll just call that JSON. And I can load some sample data. So let's just load some sample JSON. So that sample JSON comes in, and as you see in Comico, we convert that to these blocks, and that means they're typed. So we can control where they can be used to make sure you don't make mistakes. Don't use a number where it should be text. Don't use an object where it should be an array, whatever it might be. So here, you see I've got an array of items, and they're the orders, the order items. So I think there's 4 of them. So maybe we want a button for each of them. I can't honestly tell you why you would want to do that, but you might do. So we can put a loop on, and then the loop block says, okay, what data are you going to feed me, and what am I going to do for each item? So if I click on the data there, I can go to my input JSON, that array, and then for this item, if I just prime that, it will show me the first item in this loop. And for each of those, I might want to draw that button. So I can actually drag that button now from where it was and put it on there. And in the same way as before I exposed the text, I can expose the label for that button. And instead of it being hard-coded, I can replace that and I can make it come from the description. So now I've done that, basically what we're going to get, if I just make that a bit smaller, If we refresh this,
Okay.
you should see a button for each item in the order. So what you start to see is that you can bring it alive, and it can be completely personalized to every transaction it goes through. So I'm making a bit of a mess of this. Again, I'm not a designer. It's very clear. So what I might do now is park this one and just switch to here's one I created earlier, just to show you something a bit neater. So let's just save that in case I need it. So if I go back to my dashboard, I think I created one earlier and exported it. So actually, if I go here, I can go to my files and I can import a template. So I'm going to import a Comnoco email template file that I created earlier. If I select the file which I have downloaded, I might just refresh that. It didn't want to select a file. Right, let's try that again. Import the file, it's better. So I should have this one, receipt email. So it's the receipt for an order. So if I import that, it's just slightly neater to look at. And it goes with our order that we have, right? So in the same way I built it before, we've got now a couple of things I've added. They're in the email section metadata. I've given it a vague background color. And I've also added here in this preview, I've added some preview text. Now that's really important because it actually is the bit that shows, on your iPhone, whatever, you get the text that shows in the preview. That's that text. So you can control that and it won't show your HTML or anything else. So I've created this and I've done the same thing as we did before. I've got a hero section that's got some text. I've got the body section, which is this bit here, which has got one column and it's just got my text in it. And we'll come back to that. And then I've got a little divider and the footer. So it's just something basic to show it. So, and again, like we did before, I have incoming data defined. And I've also added a number input, which is the total for this order. And that is because if we look at the data that we've got, and I just paste some sample data in at this point, you'll see over here, what it doesn't have is the total amount for the order. So I'm assuming we're going to calculate that in the function that calls this. So in the body, I've put this text, and what I've done is I've put a template HTML, and in that I'm able to paste some HTML, basic HTML formatting, so new paragraphs, and then put a variable in, name and total. And once I've done that, in the data that feeds this, I can add two items. So here, let's just get rid of that. Here, what I've done is I've added two items. I've taken the order ID, I think, from memory. Let's have a look. Yes, the customer name, sorry, not the order, and the total. And this total, I've added a format number, and that allowed me to select it as a currency and give it a number of decimal places, and then I can give it the number that's coming in from our input parameters. So if I do that, you'll see it's linked to there. So delete that one because I already had it. So I've given it those two things. So now if we refresh this, you'll see that's where it gets the 0 and that's where it gets the name from, these two things. If I go and change this sample value to a number like 23.222 and then come over here and run this again, you'll see it formats that number as a currency and it drops the third decimal point as well. So that's very simply how to create a transactional email template. You can obviously go into way more detail and make it come way more alive, but let's just keep it really simple here. So here we have our template. Let's save that. So the next thing we need to do, if we've got an email template, is we want to expose that so that an API can call it and run it and send it. So you might want to call it from Bubble. So to do that, what we want to do is create a function collection, and maybe let's call this emails. And that function collection, remember, is just a place where you can order your functions. And then in here, we can choose what kind of function we're creating. So is it going to be an API that we define? Is it going to be a webhook where we just sent data and we don't get to define it? Do we want to schedule something? Or are we going to recreate something we can reuse time and time again internally? What we're going to do today is build our own API. So we'll just call this send email. And what that gives us is the skeleton API function. And in Comnoco, it says, what do you want to take in this API? What business logic are you going to apply? And what are you going to send back? So we are going to take in this raw data that another system's going to give us. We'll keep it simple. It will just be order data, which will be our sample JSON, which again, we can load just by doing this. So that's our sample order JSON. And there we see it come in like we did before. And now we also know that we want to calculate a total. So we need somewhere to put that. So here we can put the total. And this becomes an internal variable that we're not taking in and we're not sending back. We're just using it internally. So call it total calc. And now we can basically send that email and add the total. So let's keep it simple. Let's show us how to send the email first. So we'll click here, and as you can see, you can do way more. I'm going to search for send email block, and there it is. And this allows us to send the email with Comico. And what we allow you to do is sort of work with any email service provider that you have. And the idea of that is that if you were using a sort of sending email through Comnoco and we sent it for you, you'd have a risk on deliverability because someone else using that service might be spamming someone and it would get very bad reputation. So for email deliverability, you really want to set up your own. And it's really easy because there's all sorts of email service providers, from Loops to Resend to SendGrid to anything else. And you can sign up for them and use them. They've all got free tiers. So you can start sending immediately. So in my case, I'm going to use SMTP and I'm going to use Resend. And so I just want to fill in these details. So the username I know is Resend. The host address I should have here. The port is too small for me to read on my other screen, but it's 465. There we go. Yeah, absolutely. So for example, on Resend, as you see here, you just go to their settings, go to SMTP, and they give you these details right there, so you can use them. So yeah, that's correct. That's correct. So you could send using the API key and using the API, which you could either do. If there's an email service provider we don't support in that block, you can use the API call in Comnoco. And that's like setting up Postman or anything. You can set up the API connection. Or within this block, we support SMTP, and we'll be adding other email service providers just to make it really quick and easy for you to do. So we've pretty much set up our stuff. The only other thing we need to set up is the API key, the password to use that. And in Comnoco, we've got this place where you can set up your secrets, and they get stored super securely. And you can also set up environment variables, etc. So I've set one up. Here's one I set up earlier. Resend. All you do is you click here. You can add the secret name, the secret value, and it adds it. And then you've got that value. But what's really cool is you can set a different value for the same secret for different environments. So if you've got a staging environment, a production environment, you can do that. So I've already set that up. So now we can go back to where we were, which is here, and I can click this and I can go and choose the password, and I'm going to get it from a secret. So type secret, and that just allows me to choose it from that secure storage area. So now that's got my secret. So if I hide those, we can then go to the email subject. So let's call this Planet No Code Demo. There we go. And then email to, just do it to myself for the purposes of demo. And then the sender email, I just need to do it from the domain that I have set up with resend. So my sender email is slightly different. It looks like that. And there we go. We set up. Yeah, thank you. And and a massive benefit of that is you can then be sure that the email you're sending is going to end up in the inbox, not the spam. So it's really important. But exactly, that's why I did that. So that's basically a simple email, and it's really important to note in Comico that anything you find in the properties on the right hand side, you can tick this little box and it ends up on the tree. And then when it's on the tree, you can replace it and you can map it to data that comes in, or you can add if else logic and build it up. So you can do anything. But for this demo, I want it to stay hard coded. So I'm just going to leave it at that and just keep it neat. I will come and bring that back. Okay. So I think that's everything we need to send a basic email. So the next thing is we want to define what the content of the email is. And we've just built that. So what I can do is where the HTML body is expected, I can click here and I can go and choose my demo invoice template that we just set up. So if I click that, there it is. And you'll see, remember that template, we, actually, I've just put the wrong thing on there. I do apologize. I wanted, yeah, that's the PDF. We'll come to that. What I want is the receipt email. And the big hint is that it looks like an email, not a PDF. So there we go. So that's the receipt. And you remember we set it up to bring in the incoming data and also the total that we were going to calculate. So I can map both of those inputs now to these two things. So the incoming data, I can click there, and that's just our input order data. So if I click that, you see it's just connected to there. And the total, which will be 0 at the moment, again, I want to connect to my internal total calc variable. So that's now connected to there. So we haven't done that maths yet for the total. We'll come back to that, but this is the basics. And then email body text. So again, it's important to know with emails that you can send the HTML body, but you also send a plain text body for those people like your granny that doesn't have HTML turned on, or their device can't support HTML. So in the email body text, you want to give it an alternative, and you can build that dynamically, but I'm just going to put something simple in here like hello, this is your order. So we're just going to give it some hard-coded text that says that, and that's now ready to send. It's going to send the email we created. It's going to map it to that data that's come in, and you can run this in isolation and test it, or you can run the whole function if it did other things. So we can run this. It should send, and if I pop over to resend, it should show us, here we go, should show you the email that it successfully delivered. And if I click on it, you'll see what it looks like. And it says, thank you, dear John Doe, your order's 0, because we know we didn't calculate the total. And there's our email that's sent. So it's super easy and super cool. So let's just add one more thing. We can actually attach PDFs that Comnoco also generates, for example. So to do that, we can just go down to the email here and say enable attachments. And what that does is it gives us a data structure that we can generate. So we could pass that in from somewhere else, or we could as JSON, or we can generate it here. So in our case, we've got one attachment. I could duplicate that, send 2 attachments. We'll just do the one. So the attachment, I'm going to call it the name. I'm going to call it invoice.pdf. And then the content, I'm actually going to replace. So if I do this, the content I want to come from a PDF that I can generate in Comnoco. So that will be here. And then again, it wants to know the invoice data and total. So like we did before, I'll map those two to it. And the total should be down there. And now that's going to generate a PDF and send it. And the only thing I need to do is make sure that's called content to match what it expects. So now that's going to attach a PDF to our email as well. It wasn't that easy. So that's nearly job done on this. The only thing we probably want to do is calculate this order total. So to do that, we want to, before we send it, do the calculation. And for that, we want to loop through. So type loop and find loop. And we're going to loop through the data. And for each item, we're going to just build the total into there. So the loop block says, what do you want to loop through and what do you want to do for each item? So the data we want to loop through is my incoming order items array. Here we have them. So I'll loop through that. And then I'll just prime it. So it's got some data to develop with here. And then for each item, I want to set that number. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to type set number. And that will allow me to set the number from this, which will be a little bit of maths we do, to this calculation. So I'm going to point that to the calc total. And then on the from, I just want to do an add. And you'll notice I'm in a number slot, so it's showing me number type things I can do. So add, and the things I want to add are the existing value of that incoming variable. So we add to it for each item we go through. And then for each item in the loop, I want to do a multiply, and I want to take the quantity multiplied by the price. And that's it. So if I run that loop, we should see the total value become the total value of the order. And now if we run this whole thing, what it's going to do is generate the document, attach it, and send the email. So again, that email is sent. If I go back to, here we go, resend again, you'll see we've got a second one. And again, you've got it this time, it's got our order total, and it would have the attachment, and you can see the plain text version of the email as well. So super simple. So that is our email template done. That's our function done to call that email template and handle it. There's only one more thing we want to do, and that is to expose it as an API so we can call it from another system like Bubble. So to do that, we need to create a trigger. And to create a trigger, you can just use this shortcut here. Create that trigger. And once it creates, it's going to give us the choice. What kind of trigger do we want to create? Is it something we're going to run on schedule? You can define your own. Is it going to be a webhook, so it's just sent from another system and we handle it? No, we want to do an API. And I know that as we're posting data in the body, I want it to be a post. So we'll click there. And when that post comes in, I know I want to run from my email collection the send email function. So I choose that. That's now done. And now the only thing I need to do is apply some security. So you could supply security where you check if a user's logged in and check their tokens by using advanced auth. You can check an API key, which is probably what we'll do now, which says, we're not going to run this unless the calling system provides an API key. So let's do that. So we'll select API key, and then you set these up in your dashboard, but we'll skip over that for now. We've got a Planet No Code key 1 that we set up earlier. So I'll just select that. So we need that key to be able to run this. And then just when I press publish, I don't want it paused. So that's done. So that's it. So we can just press publish, and now we will have an API that will run all of this for us. So let's publish this, save the changes I haven't saved. And while that's saving, I'll just go and find my API key so that we can demo this. There we go. So we can go back to the status for this workspace, and it will show us then all of the triggers that we have running. And for each of them, we generate an open API specification. So here we've generated the one for what we've just done, and you'll see it takes in order data. And you can download that specification, so you can use it from another system, just upload it to another system. You can even see the whole workspace, and that shows you the 2 endpoints that I have here. So I've got one called demos and one called email. So we're working with just the individual email one here that we want to see. And I can now test this out. So this is what it looks like. We can press try it out. But before I do that, I'll need to provide the API key, which I have here, and authorize. Now it's going to run that. And then I can just supply this sample order data, which is the one we were working with. So I can paste that in there, and we can go and change this. So let's change it to my name here, Stuart Malt 2. There we go. And we can then press execute. And what this will do is send the email again, and we should get a success. Indeed, we've got a 200 success. We weren't sending any response back, so we won't see that. But again, if I go back to resend, which I'll bring over, you will see the third email. And if I click on here, you should see Stuart Malt 2, which shows it's triggered by that. So there we have it. That's end to end. That's how you can create this value add functionality, personalized email template with attachments from Comnoco really, really easily.